You are listening to the Billy Dees podcast.
All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. As always, I am absolutely thrilled that you are here. If you've never checked us out before, we are primarily an interview and a commentary-based program. Today, with me on the studio line is Cynthia Elliott. Cynthia, so glad you are here.
Hello, Billy. It's so good to see you.
Yes, it's been a little while since you've been on the program. So glad to have you back. Cynthia is a co-host that regularly frequents the program, and she brings all kinds of stuff to it. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. My name is Billy Dees. And, this is the time of year we're in production today. This is December 27th. And for me as a podcaster, I'll give you some just industry information here. That Christmas, New Year's time, people think, well, everybody's home, right? So they're going to be listening to podcasts and stuff. But actually, in my case anyway, and with most podcasters, the audience listens to podcasts as part of a routine. So they're commuting, or they're having lunch, or they're doing these other things, and their normal routine gets broken. So sometimes the listens can fluctuate, and I don't like taking long breaks because there is a loyal amount of the audience that does check in every week. So what do you do with that? Well, I generally try to do things that are just kind of fun, and there's predicting the future, wondering what the next year is going to be like. That's a topic that everybody's discussing. And Cynthia, like I said, she brings a lot of things. She's an intuitive. And what I like about Cynthia, too, is she also has a real good, solid background in marketing, business, and all that other kind of stuff. So she also has this real world presence with her. And those two things combine. And she always has these great insights. So we're going to talk about 2026 and what may be in store and some different categories of things. I got to tell you, 2025 was strange.
Yes, it really was. Just I couldn't wait. I can't wait, whatever, to get 2025 over.
2025 was, I never would have, I knew it was going to be different, because with that crazy election and everything else. But there's some things happening this past year that couldn't have been predicted. And oftentimes people say, well, next year is going to be crazy. And it's something that you say every year. But really, there's a little bit of apprehension that I have for the future. Am I alone in that in general? Are you optimistic? And do you feel most of the people around you are optimistic about the future?
I'm optimistic, tempered by a little, I've lived 50 years on this planet pessimism. And I feel like a lot of people are actually feeling a little bit pessimistic. And I think that really is just about being inundated with a lot of really hard to take news. I did an episode like this last year where I talked about the year and what we would have. And I think all of it came true, if not most of it. And yet we even managed to top what I thought were a lot of shocking predictions with a lot of revelations about the truth about what is going on in our society. Basically, the Matrix, which we all make fun of, but it is in many ways very real, really revealing itself. And we all found out a lot about, billions being stolen. And it was just, we just couldn't catch our breath this last year.
Yes. Probably one of the things that as we move into the future, business analysts, entertainment people, marketing people, just about every walk of life that you can imagine are really keeping tabs on what is going with AI. And I know that's been a passion of yours. You have the foundation. Do you want to mention what that is?
Yeah, I have the Soltech Foundation, where we bring events and educational programs to the country to help elevate people, particularly people in underserved communities, so they can succeed in the age of AI. One of those is an AI literacy course. And then, of course, we have Soul Blossom and Soul Bloom, which help teach people emotional and mental mastery, because we're going through tumultuous times and we have a mental health crisis, and these are necessary skills. So thank you, Billy, for letting me drop that.
Absolutely. Well, it's definitely a worthwhile foundation. And so let's start there. Is it going to impact the job market we've been hearing that for a while. I haven't seen a huge impact yet. I mean, objectively, we're just watching the marketplace. It seems like unemployment is about where it was a year ago, 2 years ago. It hasn't been a huge fluctuation. Is that going to change? They've been talking about that for a long time.
I don't think that the numbers are accurate. I do think that we have actually, in fact, had a quite a sizable drop in employment. I think a lot of that's being creatively covered up to keep optimism high. I'm not saying that we haven't created jobs. I know that the administration right now is working really hard to do that, but we have lost a lot of jobs. I mean, Amazon just let go 30,000 people, and their excuse was AI, as are a lot of them using that as the excuse. It's my prediction that in terms of the job market, within 3 to 5 years, we're going to be somewhere around 15 to 20% unemployment.
Yeah, that is possible. A lot of people say that these new technologies can create jobs as much as they can, take them away. But I don't know that the overlap, kind of like in Indiana Jones, where he has to take the sand away and put the thing there weighs exactly the same, or otherwise the ball comes down and crushes him. I don't know that the exchange of job skills is going to be that smooth. I guess there's going to be a huge dip.
Yeah, there is. And I would say right now, if we don't start having conversations about universal income this year, we're going to end up getting behind. And we already have enough people who are, dealing with housing and, the hierarchy of needs. People are already suffering under the demands of the hierarchy of needs. And we need to start to address it and be really realistic about it. We're really quick to adapt to technology, but we're really slow to actually deal with its impact. And this is not something we can afford to do. AI could actually serve to put America really back on the map even stronger as far as an economy goes in terms of production and manufacturing and all of that. But it could also really devastate the country in terms of the number of people who are going to be unemployed, whose purpose was actually being driven through their job, which means we already have the highest mental health crisis issue we've ever had. And that's just going to get worse if we don't start getting in front of it.
Yeah. The breakthroughs that AI can bring. The positive ones.
Yeah.
What do you anticipate for the next 12 months?
Yeah, I think we're going to see some really incredible medical breakthroughs, some ability to deal with issues that we haven't been able to deal with in the past, that were, incurable in the past that we're going to find are actually curable. We just didn't know how to go about it. So I think we're going to have some wonderful breakthroughs there. We're also going to see an increase in the ability to utilize artificial intelligence to make our lives easier, but with that's going to come the loss of a lot of jobs. Yeah. And so, it's kind of a really strange time to be alive. It's exciting because it's technological. It's the AI, the age of AI. It's in the fourth industrial revolution, and so it's exciting, but it also comes with a lot of burdens. So a lot of breakthroughs are going to be great, but we're also going to have some incidents. We're going to begin to see robots enter the workforce in numbers that are very sizable, which is going to dramatically increase over the coming years. I mean, in 3 to 5 years, we really are going to start looking like a movie of something futuristic or dystopian. But with that, it's going to come some incidents that are going to shake our foundation and our ability to trust artificial intelligence. We've got people out there. I mean, there's no regulation going on. So we've got people out there doing some very scary and very loosey-goosey research and utilization of AI. So yeah, we're going to have some stuff happen that's going to stun us a little bit. But maybe that's what we need to start doing some. I mean, I get why they don't want to regulate it because it is the fourth industrial revolution and they want to see it take off. But that's dangerous. It's a dangerous field to play on.
My only thing about regulation is this, and we could have the same conversation about nuclear weapons. The fact of the matter is, we can't really say, well, nuclear war is immoral, so we should ban nuclear weapons. Well, you might as well, like when you walk into a bank and there's a sign there that says no firearms allowed. It's not like somebody says, well, I'm not going to go into the bank and rob it because I guess firearms aren't allowed here. Bad people are going to do bad things with good things. You cannot avoid it. And when it comes to nuclear weapons, the fact of the matter is that genie is out of the bottle. And how to create a nuclear reaction was very exclusive technology at the end of World War II. It is not anymore.
Yeah.
And probably, people worry about nuclear war between, like, say, the United States and Russia. That's probably the least likely scenario. What is more likely is a terrorist, and quite frankly, at his or her own peril, more than happy to blow themselves up in the process of having a detonation within the United States. That is quite literally the wet dream of many terrorists, is to create a nuclear detonation within the United States.
Mm-hmm. And with artificial intelligence and robots and people doing wild research and use of them, the idea that somebody could not only create it utilizing a robot and with its artificial intelligence, like the super intelligence, is really not that far away. Yeah. And the ability to use one, whether the AI is building it or whether or not it's actually carrying out the plot, so that a human being doesn't have to actually give up their life to be a terrorist anymore. I mean, these are very scary prospects, but they're actually very realistic. And if we don't have conversations about what's possible, we can't actually prevent it.
Yeah. Well, depending on the terrorist, their ideology sometimes is in favor of that. They feel that that's a way to ensure a favor with the gods and a good afterlife. But I think that the implementation where I was going with that is the idea that, we got to regulate it, and then, like, that's going to prevent bad people from doing stuff. It's not.
Oh yeah, no.
And here again, that technology is much more fluid than nuclear technology. Even with nuclear explosions, there's certain regulators. There's certain things that happen within the reaction. There's certain types of reactions you have to get with other elements that makes it somewhat trackable in terms of the major intelligence agencies around the world working for both the United States, Great Britain, and a couple of other of our allies. There's only so many things that you can do with certain things. And when they start to see those things assembling somewhere, they know that with AI, you don't have that. Okay. It's a matter of manipulating technology. And I would think that would be much harder to trace in terms of somebody doing something in their basement with a bunch of supercomputers. That's scary.
It is scary. I mean, in terms of there are some things like the amount of heat it gives off, the amount of water that's required. Yeah. But I think the conversation around regulations and laws is really less about us being able to prevent a horrible human being from doing horrible stuff or a horrible corporation from doing horrible stuff, and more about, like, being able to prosecute and do something about it when we catch them. And then hopefully that prevents other people from doing it. That's like preventive, but who knows? It really is the Wild West.
Yeah. You talk about consciousness a lot. And one of the most profound things I've heard you say is, when we talk about artificial intelligence, we have to up our game in our own awareness. We're so worried about AI becoming self-aware, and that human beings, and to a large degree, aren't as aware as what they used to be. I found that to be a very unique insight. Do you want to talk a little bit about consciousness and what you're talking about with breakthroughs?
Yeah. So one of the big, at the core of the work that I do is the raising of human consciousness. And that's just an interesting way of saying elevating people from the lower vibrational energy, such as fear and anger, which is how our system is actually built to keep people in fear, because it allows them to be manipulated and used. But by raising our consciousness and becoming much more which is a fancy way of saying becoming more self-aware and more present in what's going on, we're equipping people with the ability to navigate and better manage this time of extraordinary. We are literally going to undergo more change, and we already have, but in just this next 2-3 years, we're going to just look like a different place. And people are not equipped for it if they are not present and aware. They're already stressed. And so that's really important. There's a lot of research going on around consciousness. It's my belief that we're all connected to each other. Quantum physics really supports that idea. And I believe that we're going to see some breakthroughs due to our collaboration with artificial intelligence and technology, and being able to better understand human consciousness and how we're connected to each other. And I think those kinds of breakthroughs are going to be really helpful, because it's going to help us to enhance ourselves while we're developing all these incredible technologies. I mean, we need to elevate. Humanity needs to continue it. Everyone thinks of us as being done, like we evolved and we're human beings, but we're still evolving and we're still tapping in and learning things about ourselves. And we need to do that in parallel with artificial intelligence so that we control it and it doesn't control us.
Interesting. That's interesting stuff there. I'm going to sound really bad here. I know people will probably hate me for saying this, but I think there's a level of stupidity in our society now that I have not
engineered.
And my grandma used to say when somebody was really stupid, I've always remembered her saying this, that they don't even know they're living. And that always used to crack me up. But there were some incidents. I don't know if you followed the news or not. It doesn't matter if you're a sports fan or not. There was an incident with some hecklers in the stands over the past couple football games, and I've been to some of these games over the years, and I can tell you, there's people that you look in their faces when they're drunk and when they're yelling at the field. These people are zombies. I mean, there's nothing there, and over the years, I guess you could say, I think social media made it more visible. I suppose that's true. But by the same token, I can remember going through going to school, going to the mall, dealing with the public and all that in the 1980s. And I just don't remember the level of stupidity that I sense from a lot of people. Am I wrong in that? Is there something that's affecting that?
I actually think that we were better behaved in many ways. Okay, let me reword that. We were being controlled better by the systems that were in place. And there was a very sort of strict code of how you behaved when you were in public. I mean, we were much less confrontational. I'm not saying there weren't people who were like that, but yeah, I mean, there were a lot of rules and a lot of expectations and a lot of, behaviors that we were, mores and all of that we were expected to show up with. And I think now with social media and the attention economy, we're seeing people show their most base selves and revel in it because it's getting them engagement. Even if people are yelling at them that they're an idiot, they're like, great, I've got 10,000 people telling me I'm an idiot. Yeah. And I think we're just seeing it more, and the communication is different. Like, in the 80s, we had televisions in our living rooms, and we had a phone stuck to the wall. We couldn't take it with us. So our idiocy was not broadcast. Yeah. We got millions of people sharing how stupid they are. Yeah. And I have to tell you, I heard some video earlier of these men talking about doing something horrible with it's a real podcast with real grown-up men on there. Well, grown-ups being, and they're talking about doing something. What would you, scenario would you imagine with your wife if you were going to do this horrific thing to her? And they're talking about it like this is like a normal conversation to have, and it's a really horrific conversation. And I'm just listening to it, thinking, wow, we really are just letting everybody know how dumb we are now.
Yeah,
or how moralless we are.
Yes, and that is the other thing that I've noticed. When I say depravity, I don't mean necessarily sexual depravity, but depravity that in a way that there is no respect for life. When Charlie Kirk was assassinated, the displays online were beyond the pale. And even what happened with Rob Reiner, somebody's death should not be celebrated. And the only thing I will say, there was a lot of people who made crass statements about Rob Reiner and his life and his beliefs and all that. I didn't notice too much celebration. What went on with Charlie Kirk was outright celebration.
Yeah, it was shocking.
Yeah, and it was shocking. And these incidents really show me. I'm not old enough. I wasn't born when Kennedy. What happened down in Dallas. That was before I was born. And Martin Luther King and the other Kennedy. I was maybe 2 or 3 years old. So I don't know, but from what I can gather is I'm sure there are people quietly in bars tucked away somewhere said, yeah, I'm glad they're gone. But for the most part, there was a certain decorum. Even people who did not agree with those individuals were not celebrating in the street like you have now. And I just find that I think we have, we talk about is evolution true or not? I think we're de-evolving.
I think it's a certain percentage of us are de-evolving. I think there's a certain group that are really struggling. I mean, it's interesting. People will say these kinds of things, and then you'll mention that the mental health crisis is worse than it ever has been before. The number of people unaliving themselves, especially younger people, is astonishing. Like I shared 30 stats over the whole month of mental health awareness, and the stats were shocking to me. And I knew a lot about mental health. We have a mental health crisis, so the fact that people are out here showing their mental illness, and I'm not making fun of them because we all have mental health and we all struggle at times. The idea that mental health actually means having a mental health challenge is like something only a certain percentage of people. We all have mental health, and it all needs maintenance. But people are out here sort of like showing it to everybody, and they're thinking that they're celebrating it. Like you look at Trump derangement syndrome. I see and hear people say and do things sometimes. I'm like, you would never have done that to another president ever, no matter how dislikable he was. That tells me just how much you've lost your mind to it. So, I mean, I think there's a percentage of the population that's actually leveling up and becoming much more present and much more aware, which is kind of hard because you begin to really understand just how messed up things are. Like us all finding out about the $1 trillion that have been stolen from us and sent to foreign countries. And while we have people starving and homeless and unable and canceling their insurance in this country. It's interesting times.
We talk about energy. A lot of times with, AI. And you also have alluded to things it could do for the space race. Do you want to talk about that? Yeah,
we're going to have some breakthroughs. So this is going to be a really exciting year. This last year was an exciting year for space and energy, and we're going to continue to see that. We're going to have some breakthroughs in terms of energy, some new forms, if you will, that will allow us to better prepare for and to be able to utilize our space programs to go out there among the stars and carry human consciousness out away. We don't want it to just be sort of isolated. This higher level, this more dense form of human consciousness or consciousness, we want to carry it out into the stars because we are unique in the universe. And the only way for us to do that is to be able to really have these incredible space programs. I'm a huge supporter of the space programs. And so the U.S. is going to see some real successes this year. We're also going to see some stuff from China. They've got a very aggressive program. They've got a lot of secret research going on. They're much more, a lot of people are like, oh, hey, they're only doing this and that with AI. It's like, it's China. Do you think because you work in technology that China's sharing their greatest secrets with you? Please. Yeah. China's incredibly competitive, and they are going to use AI to, try to beat us at our own game on every level. So we're going to see a huge event. We're going to see some advancements in energy, new forms of energy, new ways to utilize energy. And we're going to see, some real successes in the space program. We're going to see some incidents as well. This is part of what happens when we're conducting, when we're plowing new roads.
Yeah.
It usually comes at the cost. We've seen this with a few of the rockets this last year that really struggled from some of the different countries. So it's an exciting time to be alive. I mean, I do believe in the very near future, and I mean this in like 10 to 30 years, we will be out in space with space, which I'll just say warships, if you will, for the lack of a better word, where we're out there, really beginning to understand the universe better.
Yeah. I would not understate the technology that not only China, but a number of other countries have. We often take it for granted that the United States is the leader in technology, and we are a leader. I don't know if we are the leader anymore.
Yeah.
And here again, getting back to stupidity, this is a cultural thing. We have become a culture that celebrates stupidity. And if the Chinese, their whole culture is built around an importance of work. Mm-hmm. They respect their parents. They respect their elders. They respect their teachers. Work is held in high regard, and they go to school and they don't learn a bunch of social studies bullshit. Yeah.
A bunch of crap that's not going to do anybody any good.
Yeah, they actually know how to do math, and really good math. Mm-hmm. Newton came up with with calculus and a lot of other things, but there's people out there who really know how to utilize those tools. And Americans speak with we. We went to the moon. We have cell phones. We have this and that. Only a small fraction of Americans actually know how those things really work. Mm-hmm. And that's not true in China. Okay, so the idea that we could get behind them not only in technology, and technology and defense always tie together. They always have.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this is a very big deal. Like when I talk about space and energy, those two things are deeply tied to our defense program. It is really important that America stay ahead, that we be the ones to make those breakthroughs if we can on every front, because we are in a space race, and whoever gets out there first is going to command and dominate, and that's just the truth. And command and dominate, and this is what other people miss about it. They think that we just want to go on like joy rides, and that rich people just want to pay. No, this is really about the fact that we've got planets out there that have resources that we're running low on in this planet, or resources that we don't even have on this planet, that are going to allow us to take things to the next level, and whoever gets there first really does dominate.
Yeah, it's people talk about the space race of the 1950s, actually in 1960s. That was all about defense. That was all about fear of Russia, the USSR at the time. That was that was the boogeyman. And yes, those things have not gone away. Those aspects of things have not gone away. When you look at what technology can do now with AI, with what we're learning about propulsion, with what we're learning about communications, the idea that we could be attacked from space is a very real thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And even in it, just to give you to tease, how, as a futurist and intuitive, I have foreseen that in the not too distant future, some of our inventions here on the planet will actually come back to us. Like we're developing these robots and these humanoid robots, which are human robot hybrids. Those will go out into space, and they will end up coming back to us. In the future, this is my prediction, and they will not see us as their parent.
Yeah, I'll tell you too. This came across my feed a couple months ago, and now I'm kind of following it. I have a bizarre fascination with these sex dolls that they're selling. And I'm not being cute here. I'm not being
no. I know you're not. It's actually really serious.
These things, I've seen close-ups of the texture of the skin looks so real. And the hands, the veins in the hands, the tendons going out to the fingers, the detail is absolutely amazing.
They're going to make a lot of money off of men who would rather have. Well, I mean. The truth is, a lot of men, there's Dean. I don't know if you've ever heard Dean Withers, I think is his name. He's a podcaster, and he does this thing where he has men call in and challenge his beliefs that women are equal to men. And the number of men that call in to say that women are subservient or women aren't good leaders is astonishing. And he does a brilliant job of really nailing them down. But I've been hearing a bunch of these lately, and you and I did an episode about 6 months ago about because I was really concerned they had a humanoid robot that was going to be able to give birth to children, and we did this really great episode talking about that and the issues around these sex dolls or sex robots and what that's going to cause, which will cause a decrease in marriage and birth rates, further decrease. We did that, and then I started to hear all this content, and then I posted like a week ago on X. I was like, you know what? I changed my mind. Maybe robot girlfriends are really good, because then they can be abusive, dismissive, treat them like a slave, beat them, do whatever they want to them, and it won't be the same as, at least it's a human being. And that sounds really terrible, but the statistics are quite shocking. It will be interesting to see how these robots are actually treated. And, since they can record memory, which I think they should be required, which brings me to something else I want to mention. Sure. Since they record, it'll be interesting to see, will we eventually be convicting someone for killing their sex robot, because they have the video? Like, that's kind of, it's wild, but it's kind of fun to sort of speculate. Not fun, but you know what I mean? It's interesting to speculate. Yeah. But that brings me to something else. We're going to have a serious issue if this country doesn't do something about the technology that they're going to want to ship into our country, like these home robots. I do not believe we should have home robots in this country that are coming from China or countries like like that because the fact we already have television spying on us, we already have social media spying on us, phones spying on us. You're going to put a robot in a home, and not only could it spy on us, but what's to stop it from doing something that's been programmed to do that you can't see? Yeah. Like I think that's actually a really important conversation.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know. I know we're going to talk a little bit about men here coming up. I know you have a lot to say about men. And I will say, I don't think that men are not. There's this woman on TikTok that does nothing and talk about how bad men are. I'm going to have to, some of them are actually kind of funny. She talks about how they have bad hygiene. But anyway, I don't think that most men are that sinister, but I do think they're, in terms of abuse, I would have to say my personal experience of having a lot of male friends from all walks of different life, I've never heard one be coy or be funny about abusing a woman. Now, it's not to say that doesn't happen. I know it's a big problem. I don't want to piecemeal this out. I just say that I know it's a problem. But I think it's becoming a given that all men are terrible. And that's the shtick of this woman on TikTok. She's got like 200,000 followers, and her shtick is most, not all, but most men are fiends. Okay. I don't think that. But here's what I do think. There's a certain side of men that this will resonate with in terms of the sex doll. I don't know that it's something that... like I said, that's going to want them to be especially deviant or abusive. But I remember, I believe this was Charlie Sheen. He was asked one time, this was way back in his winning days. Okay. And I believe it was him. He was asked one time, hey, man, I'll tell you what, man, you're a good looking guy. You're a movie star. You're loaded. You can have any girl you want. Why would you pay for a prostitute to have sex with you? And his answer was, I don't pay them to have sex with me. I pay them to go away. Now, I know this is bad, but that's probably where the worst of it would be. I think men do like the accessibility of sex without all the headaches. Okay. And I think that's probably the worst of it. And I'm not trying to be funny about this, but I just think that's probably the worst of it. But what this is going to do in the long term and it speaks to women too, when the line between having a relationship with a person and the line between having a relationship with something that is inanimate, that is essentially, we talk about a blow-up doll. Now, these things are much more advanced than a blow-up doll, but in terms of life, they're just as dead as a blow-up doll. But they can trick your senses into believing that they are something more, which then tricks your mind.
So one of the main reasons why women have stopped getting married and stopped dating, I mean, it's a huge trend. It is a huge trend, is because there is a lot of men can't actually see it. Do I think most men are bad? No. Do I think that too many men are bad and not enough men are doing something about it and teaching and helping to push forward emotional intelligence? Yeah, that's actually a huge issue. But men are not doing the work to overcome a lot of the assumptions that they have placed in their life. Like I am actually quite astonished at times at the number of men who are producing the red pill bros and all those idiots. The number of men out there that think women should be subservient. You talk about the conservative Christian movement, like that a lot. Most of those guys actually see women as second class citizens. They really do, or that she should be home cooking, cleaning. When a robot, which looks hot, can actually wipe your ass, do your laundry, cook your meals, I was about to say something really crude.
That's okay.
No. Suck your cock, all of those, like, Like when they can do everything that they have taken women for granted for. Women are pushing back now and saying, look, I don't want to be your mommy. Like I want to have a career, and if I'm going to pay half, then I'm not going to do all the home labor as well. And I don't want to have children because I'm going to be expected to quit my job or be the main caretaker, come home from my job and do most of everything. I mean, the amount of emotional, physical, spiritual labor that has been placed on women's doorsteps and is assumed by the vast majority of men, is one of the reasons why we have the issue going on. Simultaneously, we have a lack of emotional intelligence in men because they haven't needed to evolve. Like they're mad at women for evolving, but it's because we didn't really have a choice. Yeah. And we wanted to be able to take care of ourselves and not be subject to a man. And if we do not see a real dramatic increase in the number of emotionally intelligent men who see women as equals, we're going to have a lot of girlfriend robots. Men will be I bet you some men will even be getting married to their AI robot girlfriend. And she'll be able to do all those things that these men expect. And so we're going to see some awful incidents. I mean, this is just going to be part of what happens. Is it everybody? No. Do I think it's all men? No. But do I think it's way more men? I mean, just in my own experience, the number of men that I have met that are sadistic and awful human beings who abuse women is quite astonishing. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of bad, but they don't have a corner on the market on being bad human beings. There's plenty of bad women out there. And so, I will say that there's a lot of very conniving, evil, opportunist women out there. Okay. And the world is full. When you talk about red pill, toxic, and men with is it an emotional quotient? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, emotional intelligence. So men haven't really needed to evolve. Like, and this is really a problem. It's a societal issue that we have. And because men it hasn't been a requirement or an expectation for men to be emotionally intelligent. As a matter of fact, men have been gifted with this. Men are less emotional than women, which is bullshit because the 92% of all crimes, violent crimes, are committed by men. Our prisons are filled with men, and all wars have been started by men and kept going for years on end by men. So to say that, when a man loses his temper and starts breaking things or hurting his partner, that is somebody who is not in command of their emotional experience. And to, the number of men that I hear who do say things like women aren't good leaders, I mean, it amazes me. And as a Gen X woman, it's actually quite dominant in my generation. But to even hear these young kids repeating this red pill nonsense, we have the number of podcasters, male podcasters out there that are driving this narrative, and they're teaching these young men who are lonely. A lot of them are struggling with mental illness. They're isolated because they're all using their cell phones. They're not challenged by society to actually become emotionally intelligent and evolved and responsible for themselves, and they're being fed these what seeming like a masculine guy who's teaching them to treat women as second-class citizens. This is all it's done is they're a big part of this whole a recipe that has brought us to a place where the birth rate and marriages are down on unprecedented levels. And I actually see that worsening this year because we have more red pill, horrific, toxic, gaslighty content than we've ever had before.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but I would also say that I think the pendulum went too far the other way. I mean, a lot of men were essentially demasculated.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I don't even know if I'd call them. I mean, are they men when they want to be women?
And Nicki Minaj, who actually I liked even when she was somewhat of a controversial figure with the twerking and all that. I will give her this, and this isn't what I'm about to say isn't exclusive to rap music. It's across the board. Music right now, the music in what's being produced is very synthetic. The people that are producing music are more technicians than they are musicians, and they can take somebody who's got a good image, make them hot for a while, and then their limitations, and eventually a show, and they move on to the next one. Nicki Minaj has some inherent talent. She's got a good musical feel, and I like her voice. I like the way she sings and raps.
Yeah, I like her too.
Yeah, and I've liked her as a person for a long time. Now, she has seemingly, and I don't want to speak for her, but she's made some pro-conservative, pro-Trump, pro-Republican comments here recently. And one of them was there's nothing wrong with being a girl and there's nothing wrong with being a boy. And that turned out to be this big Is that really a controversial statement?
No, it's not. But the liberals and people who have TDS are going to find like 2-3 words in a 8 paragraph conversation, and they're going to turn it into whatever. I don't think what she said was too bad. I mean, I think that move was stupid, but that's a conversation on the list. Is the whole conservative Christian turning point situation.
Yeah. Okay. And that's, like I said, I became more aware of Turning Point. I was aware of it, but I became more aware of it after what happened with Charlie Kirk. And by the way, what happened to him was a shocking abomination, whether you agree with what he said or not. We cannot tolerate that type of stuff.
No.
And now that I've gotten a little bit more familiar with it, I kind of understand the message a little more. I understand why it gets criticized, but I also understand why it's popular. Because so many traditional beliefs that are just kind of, for example, okay, take religion completely out of it. Every statistic in the world says when it comes to being privileged, what's going to give you a head start in life is you have 2 parents. There's absolutely every statistic in the world supports that. Every statistic in the world says if you're going to be successful to some degree, you finish high school. Every single statistic in the world says the last step, you don't have kids of your own until you're out of high school. Those 3 things right there make you privileged, in quotation marks. Now, those are values that Christians often talk about, and they get lambasted for it. But objectively, those things do prepare you better for life.
I don't think most people, although I did give Charlie, I have to be honest with you, about 2 months before he was killed, I don't usually do a lot of responding to people's posts, especially when I'm like, but he had said something about women, have babies and don't become a career person. And I was like, because it's very easy to say something stupid like that. I'm sorry. I think that's a terrible message to send to women when the vast majority of women have to take care of themselves. And because our divorce rate is so high, what you're basically saying is make yourself vulnerable to being homeless. And we got a ton of women who are raising the kids. The vast majority of children from divorce are raised by women. And a lot of people just want to make that about her getting money from the man. But the vast majority of divorces do not end in some woman getting a bunch of money. Like, that's such an illusion created. I don't have a problem with those. And I don't think most people do. I think most people have an issue with conservative Christians because of the hierarchical behavior that they exhibit, and that they're making the right decisions about their life, and that you're not, and you're going to go to hell because of your choices. And that underlies and underscores a lot of that preachy behavior. So I think it's less about, like, if somebody says, I think, it's better when kids are raised by 2 parents, that's not insulting. But if it's said from a pyrotechnic filled stage while telling everybody that if they don't have God, they're going to go to hell, it makes the whole message get lost. I think most of us know, and I frankly don't think we need conservative Christian behaviors to come back to the surface for us to promote the fact that people should have children in 2-person relationships and that people should finish school and things like that. But, let's throw the baby out with the bathwater.
One of the things that you talked about or mentioned, and I would agree with you, that social media as we know it is on the decline.
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to talk? And I agree with you, and I have my own reasons for saying that. I'll let you go first. Why is that?
Social media is its own worst enemy. They come out with something new. It's really popular, and they ruin the platforms every single time with monetization and limiting your engagement and views. One of the best things that TikTok did, what made it dominate, was that you could be this random person wherever and engage with people all over the planet and build a following just from being an interesting or smart or just kind, whatever it was, person. And all the platforms do this. They go monetization. They start shoving ads down your throat. They start making it difficult for your content to be seen by anybody, and then you have to pay for it. And they're all doing that. Instagram's pay to play. They're all now pay to play. And on top of that, because we live in the attention economy and being able to get anyone's attention now when you have like 3 seconds before somebody's like click, is that you have to play a role and you have to pick an angle. which I find boring as hell, which is one of the reasons why I just refuse to do it. Like, I'm sort of general, I have an overarching thing, but I'm not going to be the person that you go to that talks about divorce or menopause or, abusive men or whatever that angle is. Like Scott Galloway is the lonely, he picks the lonely male epidemic. It's wearing on people, and we've had a few years now with the closures where we were sort of all like, it was great. We're all communicating with each other and sharing these sort of ideals, but now it's getting old. And on top of that, we're getting inundated with advertising. And on top of that, we've got a lot of content, which is rage baity and negative. And it's beginning to really wear people down. And I think the idea of racing around and sharing yourself with everybody in the world on every single platform is beginning to lose its shine. I mean, the 98% of people cannot make money on social media. And at some point, you have to look at what you're doing and say, where am I prioritizing my time and energy? And I think what we're going to see in 2026 is this sort of return to the she thing will be to be unavailable, to not be available all the time, to not be communicating all the time, to not be posting all the time, to be mysterious, to be somebody that people have to get to know. I think that's going to become popular.
Well, the thing that I would say, it's one thing to say that it's hard to become a creator to the point that you're going to make money. That's one thing. But it's to the point now on most platforms where you will get very little view, very little interaction, unless you're paying to be verified, you're paying for this, you're paying for that, you're paying for the other thing. And what it's doing is it's turning most people into viewers. Mm-hmm. And that will the whole thing of social media saying is social media, meaning it was two-way. You could, follow big creators and other things, but you could also contribute to the flow of information in some meaningful way. And I think that has been stripped from most of the platforms now. And unless you're doing something, social media's most useful tool is supporting something else. Like I use it to support the podcast, which lives primarily on podcast platforms. But it isn't the other way around. There's people that were very successful maintaining podcast social media platforms, and they just simply can't do it that now without pushing monetarily paying for stuff to get pushed out. So that model did very well for 10, 15 years. But they're trying to tweak it now, and they're tweaking it too fast, and they're doing it incorrectly.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, they've got to let the average user participate to some degree, or they're not going to.
That's the mistake they're all making.
They might as well watch it.
Yeah, I checked out. Like I'm on Instagram and Facebook, but one of the reasons they became so bad about that years ago. We're not even talking. It's been a few years, but now they're all like that, and that's a huge mistake for them. But I actually think it's going to end up being better for human beings. Hopefully, they'll spend more time will be developing themselves and getting out into their communities and becoming part of the community. We're going to need that. We're going to need that desperately for people to build community that's strong, like we used to have when I was a kid. When when we were both kids, community. A lot of it stemmed from the church, but we've evolved. We can have community that doesn't involve having a particular point of view in religion, and I think that's much more a better community anyway. Yeah. But that's going to become really necessary. Yeah. With technology, we're becoming increasingly isolated, although we feel as though we're out there because we're on all these social media platforms. In fact, that's all false, shallow exchanges that don't actually have any depth to them. They don't have any realness to them. So
speaking of that, I mentioned they might as well be watching a movie. Movies are not doing well. Hollywood is not doing well.
No, that was one of the predictions from last year. I mean, actually, if you go back to I did a video 3 years ago, and I was like, Hollywood's screwed.
Yeah. And for a lot of reasons.
A lot of reasons.
Certainly the rise of streaming, which Hollywood invested way too much in. There's too many things. You can't find half the programs. They're on 12, 15, 20 different. You used to talk about cable having a lot of channels. Now you got so many streaming services, you can't keep track of them. Yeah. They overinvested. You have things with TikTok and other things where people are spending their time looking at the screens in their hand, not at the ones at the Cineplex. Mm-hmm. And they did. We talked about this before many times during the shutdowns. The arrogance into which these actors spoke down to all the peons out there about shots, getting these jabs, as they say, and acting and behaving a certain way when they did the opposite in many cases. They had the resources to go somewhere else. And the anti, I guess you could say the anti-celebrity now.
Yeah. But they earned that.
Yeah. Yeah. And getting back to Rob Reiner, he said some things that were very insulting to folks. And here again, I'm not pro or con on Rob Reiner. He was a child of the nepotism machine, mm-hmm. as much as Trump was, and he was what he was. I didn't agree with a lot of his policies and so forth, but I didn't have any animosity towards him. He was just another entertainer. I will give him this. The couple of movies he did, he pretty much gave birth to the romantic comedy with When Harry Met Sally. Mm-hmm. And he changed the way, if you're a fan of courtroom dramas, with Law and Order and all those NCIS and all those ones, he changed courtroom dramas with A Few Good Men. He changed the way those were presented. Okay.
Oh yeah. He had a stunning impact. And you know what? He's allowed to have his own views. So he was an asshole about being a liberal. Doesn't mean that what happened to him was okay. No. And the assumptions that a lot of people made about what happened with the son, I talk a lot about the fact that I believe pharmaceutical industry has done more damage to mental health in this country than anything else. I mean, look where we are. We have 10 times more drugs. They've been out now for 35 years. Well, probably much longer, but the big ones like Paxil. And yet we find ourselves with an all-time high mental illness. So it's not working, folks.
Yep. And guys like him, mm-hmm. I've said this from the very beginning, Metro Goldwyn Mayer, okay, they did not get political. And they kept a tight lid on stars back then because they knew those stars were stupid. And they didn't want them going out and getting involved in politics. They kept a very close rein in on their stars back then. And now you have people like Rob Reiner, who have become political figures as much as they are entertainers. And you can't separate those two once you've created that beast. Once you've created that two-headed monster, there's no separating it. Which is, and I'll just bring this to, I want us to bounce over before we, do whatever we're going to do to the turning point thing. I think this actually has parallels. Now, go ahead.
So we have Hollywood's dying for many reasons, as we know. The price of movies, just even going to see the movies, the streaming services, the fact that they couldn't come up with an original idea to save their lives, and they just kept putting out the same shit. Like, I mean, come on, how many times are we're gonna go find something from the past? I mean, how many times did Jane Austen really need to be redone? Mm-hmm. But it's things like that. 12 different Avengers movies, and I was a huge fan until I was like, okay, I'm getting weary. Yeah. But and the arrogance of the celebrities, the lecturing, there's no relatability with celebrities. They killed the opportunity to they could have done something about it about 4 or 5 years ago, but they screwed that whole thing up by telling us all how to live. Yep. And now it's too late. And people would rather hear, because we're also challenged, find the cost of everything, the food, the gas, the housing, all of that stuff. It's off the charts, got people under extraordinary pressure. They don't want to see people walking red carpets, wearing $10,000 dresses anymore. It's unrelatable. It was that mixing of religion. Religion. Well, I guess you'd call it religion because the way liberals behave, it was a religion for them, and politics and Hollywood and entertainment. That is one of the reasons why there's been such a backlash. While on the one hand, the turning point, Erica Kirk's situation has certainly brought a lot of attention to conservative Christian and Christian nationalism. It's caused a huge backlash, which is actually a very big problem, and I believe it will be an increasingly difficult issue for Republicans to overcome if they continue to ram it down people's throats the way it's been done in the last 3 months. You're blending religion. I mean, are you a religious organization or are you a political organization? Because I'm confused. Because what is your status as a nonprofit? Because you act like a political action committee. And you're telling people, I mean, to even hear her say that they were going to get J.D. Vance elected. It's like, you know what? You need to sit down. Please go away for a couple of weeks because, sorry, I'm bouncing all over the place. This is actually really important to me. I believe we're finally getting on the right track to do something about America's future. And I do not want to see it get derailed by people who want to see us return to the way things were in the 80s. You cannot uncork that bottle, and some of the things that are being said and the behaviors and just a lot of what's happened since Charlie Kirk was killed has been incredibly distasteful. Abnormal. I'm not here to bash Erica Kirk or how the Merry Widow is behaving. Doing the video 2 days after with a face full of makeup and promo merchandise behind you was the beginning of just a series of just huge mistakes. And when you fold that in with this very lectury approach that's happening from the stages that they're doing, and I don't know if you've heard some of the content, but they're having debates about women being second-class citizens at turning point events and that women should lose their right to vote. I mean, these are conversations that are happening in front of thousands of people at these events. This is not the approach that is going to help get him elected. Telling people how to live and what God to believe in and whether or not they should think Jesus did this or that. Jesus was not a Christian. And the fact that Christians and conservative Christians and the Christian, they sort of co-opt him in this way. It's not America. This is not America, the way we approach things in America. And I think it's actually a big mistake for the Republican Party. And if they don't back off of it, the race that J.D. Vance was not in, they are now putting him in, and they're giving the rope to the Democratic Party that they desperately need to get themselves back on footing.
Yeah. They're both the Republicans and the Democrats are in bad shape. The Democrats are still dealing with a certain amount of lunacy in that party.
Yeah, that's going to be the thing they have to root out this year. If they can root that out in the next couple of months and put forward a much more sane approach and weaponize some of the dumb decisions Republicans are making, they could actually have a chance.
Yes, and if you think otherwise, and here again, I'm for the most part, I lean conservative. And I don't want some of those crazy left ideologies to come back in like they were a couple of years ago, because they were just crazy. I mean, it was beyond agreeing or disagreeing with them. They weren't even in the same realm of reality.
It was lunacy. It still is a bit lunacy, but at least the trend. And I don't have a problem with people being transgender, but the children thing and the number of Hollywood kids. The statistical odds of that many Hollywood kids being transgender is bizarre.
Yeah. Let me ask you this about the voting. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's generally considered that women didn't have the right to vote because they were women, but it was more complicated than that. What a lot of the original idea is that men were eligible. Probably not eligible is not the right word. They were compelled to be drafted. So because of conscription, they felt that the people who are going to fight the wars that the politicians start, that those people should be, doing the voting.
Do you think they actually, I mean, I think that sounds like a really good excuse, but do you think they actually considered giving women the right to vote for a really long time? Because my understanding is that they fought that for as long as they could.
Well, I'm going somewhere with this.
Okay.
There's been suggestions now because women contribute to society very heavily, that we just tweak that a little bit, okay? And we say that if you haven't filed a tax return, you don't vote. Meaning that if you are, and right now we're about somewhere between 45 and 50% dependent society. Now, some of those people have earned it. They're not all, just going along for the ride. They've paid into retirement. They've invested, whatever. But for the most part now, we have a situation where half the country is pulling the wagon and the other half is sitting in the wagon. And can we sustain a country where there's more people in the wagon than there are pulling it. So there have been people suggested that if you haven't filed a tax return and paid taxes, that you shouldn't be eligible to vote, that should be the new standard. What do you, what
that sounds like a really slick way of taking a lot of women's right to vote away. You want them to be so let's get this right. You want them to be mothers. You want them to be traditional. You want them to have kids. And now you don't want them to have a right to vote because they're not paying taxes. You know, the fact is it's an absurd suggestion because people fluctuate in their work and women give birth and take a little time off. So now she can't vote. But in a year when the child is a certain age, she can vote. It's just absurdity. And it actually pisses me the fuck off that that's even a conversation. In America, we should not be making that. If you're an American citizen, you have the right to vote because you have a vested interest and your life is impacted by the decisions that are made, regardless of whether or not you paid freaking taxes.
Yeah.
You know, what happens to you when you get sick? What kind of insurance you might have? I mean, perhaps you're just not working for whatever reason, but you're still impacted by the decisions that are made in this country. And to even bring that up sounds like that has to be a Republican idea. Because it has to be, because they've always used money as a weapon. I mean, I'm a Republican. I'm very open about that. And I was a Democrat for a long time until he started acting like Looney Tunes. And then I switched.
That's funny.
But yeah, it has to be because they're the only ones that come up with these crazy ass ideas that involve limiting people's rights by using money.
Yeah. Well, I'm not for making any changes to eligibility to vote. I think citizens should have a right to vote. So let me state that very plainly. It's a good talking point. I wanted to hit you with it. However, I mean, you could make the argument that a lot of Democrats did try to bring an influx of a dependent society into this country.
And the only reason if they're not citizens, if we shouldn't even be. That's a whole other conversation. The fact that, I mean, we all knew they were doing it. I knew because I kept trying to do things in New York 2 years ago. And I would go into, I went into the DMV and this is just the story. I keep repeating this story to people because I found it so fascinating. I'm there to get my ID and then to get my driver's license in New York. And they will not, I have everything that I was asked to bring. And I have an old license from having lived there before. And they wanted me to leave and go back with divorce papers from 15 years ago for a name I've never used. And on the counter in front of me is a sign that said, if you are, and they use a different wording, but it was illegal immigrant, please bring a handwritten note by the person that you're living with or your landlord so that we can get you an ID. So the illegal can get an ID with a handwritten note, but I bring in everything, passport, you name it, bills, everything. And they want me to leave. And I could never get another appointment there because they couldn't find me in the system. Had a license there before, went by the DMV. Anyway, the point is that kind of thing kept happening. I would go to apply for funding for the Celtic Foundation. And on there, it would say, if you're whatever that phrase is they kept using for illegal immigrant, we have special funds for you. And I kept running into it. And then I went to my local in Brooklyn. I went to my local, not congressman, but I forget what they are. They're important in New York. He oversaw that, the borough that I lived in. I went to his offices and the entire plate glass front window of his office was nothing but illegal immigrant opportunities, money, funding, housing, food, Visa cards. And I was standing there like, oh my God, this country is so screwed up right now. And I realized what the Democrats were doing. I mean, I had heard rumors. I had thought that might be what they're doing, but it was confirmation. And we need to change that. Illegal immigrants, if you're not a citizen, you should not be able to vote. I don't care what your status is.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. But that's where a lot of this conversation is coming from. I would only disagree with you. I don't think it's aimed at women. I think it's in response to what has been done with manipulating the population. For the power of manipulating the vote. And I think that's where a lot of it's coming from. Now, I think there's better ways. I think citizens should have the right to vote. I think enforcing the laws, like with illegal immigration, I want to be very clear on that, because Democrats and left wingers will not. They'll just say, well, people are against immigration. No, they're not. What they're against is illegal, just leaving the front door to your home wide open. I believe it was Senator Kennedy from Louisiana said one time, and I thought this was a good analogy. You lock your door when you go to bed at night, not because you hate everybody out in the world, but because you're not going to let anybody into your home until you know who they are. And I thought was a great way of explaining why enforcement of the borders is important. It has nothing to do with hatred and all this other kind of crap. No. Interesting conversation today.
Yes.
I want to thank you very much, Cynthia. Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me at shamanisis.com. And of course, I'm on all my social media under at Shamanisis or at Shamanisis Official.
My name is Billy Dees. You can find the Billy Dees podcast anywhere podcasts are found. You just a simple search. We're strongest on the major podcast platforms. Here again, real easy to find the Billy Dees podcast. You can find me on X, which at one time was Twitter. And Twitter is now X, at Billy Dees on X. And that's kind of like my social media home. We were talking about social media. X has gone through a lot of changes as well. But it is still a place for active, real-time events. When there's a news story breaking, it's on X. Thank you very much for listening to the Billy Dees podcast, and we will talk to you again very, very soon. I'm Billy Dees and host of the self-titled podcast, The Billy Dees Podcast. We are primarily an interview and a commentary-based podcast featuring authors and creators talking about their craft, advocates for community issues, and myself and an array of co-hosts discussing current events. There's no partisan ranting and raving going on here, just great content. You can find the Billy Dees Podcast on your favorite platform and on Twitter at Billy Dees. Thank you, and I hope you listen in.